Die Kulturmittler, der IFA-Podcast zu Außenkulturpolitik.
Welcome to a new episode of Die Kulturmittler, the IFA podcast on foreign cultural policy. My name is Amiral Al, and I'm very glad you're joining us today as we'll talk about daily cultural and non-cultural life during the war in Ukraine. This episode is the fourth part of a Ukraine special in which we dedicate 6 episodes to the developments in the fields of civil society, arts and culture since the outbreak of the war in February 2022. Today, my guest is Diana Berg, a Ukrainian human rights activist and artist who has also founded the cultural center platform CHU in Mariupol back in 2016. Dear Ms. Berg, a warm welcome to Die Kulturmittler.
Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me. Hi Amira. I'm happy to be here, happy to be the part of any IFA activity, actually.
It's a pleasure to have you, really.
Thank you.
We are meeting here at the International Film Festival Berlinale in Berlin. The short film It's a Date, in which you participated, is celebrating its world premiere here, or it was just, I think, yesterday night?
Yeah, last night.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. I just saw the final cut of the movie only last night during the premiere, and it's awesome, it's beautiful, although it's very short. It's really part of Berlinale shots. It's only 6 minutes long, but it's totally, worth watching.
Wonderful. And you've also participated at the Documenta in Kassel last year. My question is, do you believe that contributing to such events will be perceived positively among Ukrainians and maybe give them a different perspective in times of war?
Well, it's something I was thinking the whole year about. Definitely, Ukrainians should be using any stage, any platform as a means of talking about us, as about a means of raising visibility about Ukraine, about the war in Ukraine, about what's happening in our country, and about arts, of course, and cultural perspective on what's happening. So contributing to these events, to this kind of international events like Documenta, like Berlinale, I think in my life, it only happened during last year, so I never was a part of such big event. And suddenly...
So what does it mean to you personally, this international recognition and attention? How does it make you feel?
Well, I think it's fair and logical that Ukraine is in the spotlight now, globally, because what's happening in our country is really concerning so many people all over the world. And we have so many allies, so many partners, so many friends all over the world, starting from governments and elites and politicians, and to just regular human beings who do help and solidarize. And of course, cultural institutions, of course, big cultural events also pay attention and somehow try to appreciate our courage and fight and resistance. Like in Berlinale, they made this beer, the symbol of Berlinale, the beer, like with blue and yellow, the pin. They're wearing it. So, and they talk about Ukrainians, they talk about Ukrainian movies. So it's really cool to feel that. It's like you feel the support.
Because you just said that it's, big institutions and cultural events. Talking about cultural institutions, in 2021, you have been a fellow at the cross-culture program of IFA. And if I understand correctly, you were working with the artists and political activists from the Center of Political Beauty during that time. How important are these kinds of cultural programs and exchanges for Ukrainian artists at the moment? And what did you take away from this experience?
Yes, indeed, I was the part of that year's CCP. Unfortunately, it was the COVID year and it took place online. I think it was the only online CCP, unfortunately. But still, it was a great experience. We even had a project that was born and developed during CCP with my fellow artists, now friends, Felix Banhotze from Berlin and Pavel Mendes from Cuba. Mm-hmm. And we are still friends. We see each other, we meet when we can, because Pavel moved to study in Germany. And we still have this project being developed yet. It's a Red Lines project, and it's about the post-totalitarian societies and communities in terms of, communication of the people and symbols and so on. So we still have the website, Red Lines.
So that means it brought together people from all around the world?
Absolutely, absolutely. I still have communicate with those fellows from my leg, because there were several legs or directions: culture, social, political, so on. And now I am the CCP alumni, which also opens up even more opportunities. Like, for example, last year, as an alumni, I participated in a workshop for LGBTQ and a workshop of LGBTQ communication and so on. And this topic was really deeply processed during this workshop. And again, we met even more people from all over the world. So, if you want to make some friends from different part of the globe, you just should apply to CCP. That's my advice.
That's great. It has now been approximately a year since the war has started and Russia invaded Ukraine. This is, however, not your first experience with war in Ukraine, since this war has been simmering since 2014, when pro-Russian separatists took power in Donetsk, which is your hometown. In an article you wrote that back then your life as an activist began, and it changed your life completely. What was your life like before 2014, and what has changed ever since? Can you take us there?
I call myself, my version of me before 2014, a pacifist, because, I was not into politics, into civil life, into activism. I was just leading ordinary life and was like a designer, graphic designer, and that's it, in Donetsk. But then Maidan started, and I think it really touched everyone. If you didn't go to Maidan, to Kiev, then you were at least, following it online on streams and were really trying to help and send something there. And this is how it started. But then, these first steps of Russian takeover came to Donetsk. Then we understood that was their plan to come and grab the territories. They came to Donetsk and they self-proclaimed governor. They said, now I'm the governor. Just a random guy.
This did something to you, no?
It did something to me. And me and my friends, we just said, let's go and protest. And we just wrote it in social media. Let's go protest in 2 days. And we came there and saw thousands of people with Ukrainian flags. And then we realized that was the movement that was needed right in that moment. And that is how I became an activist, and I even became an initiator of the movement, which we called Donetsk is Ukraine. And it united many people and many actions, many rallies. But each of the rally during that spring was more and more violent in terms of counter-resistance of pro-Russian powers. They were attacking us. They were bigger and bigger crowds of them. One of the rally was really tragic because people was killed. Our Ukrainian friends were killed by Russians. Then we understood it is serious, that they are fighting just for really Ruski mir, Russian, world.
Did you ever expect that Russia would invade Ukraine at any point?
Before 14th, no. But then it was shock, and it was a despair to do something, so to fight, to resist. But then it became one of the last march we had. It was attacked. It was attacked heavily and brutally, and many people ended up in hospitals. And at the same time, there was a pressure online and offline on the organizers, because this pro-Russian that flooded Donetsk by the time, they were making walls of shame of people who they wanted to kill. For example, this is Diana Berg. Her address is this. Her telephone is this. She is the traitor, for example. That's how it happened. It was already very dangerous for me to stay at my home even. So I decided to leave for a week. When all cools down, I come back. That's it. That's how I left Donetsk, my hometown, for good.
You left Donetsk in 2014, right? And you fled first to, I don't know exactly, to another city, but then you went to Mariupol.
Yeah, Odessa, then Lviv, but then I ended up in Mariupol when I realized that it's been 3 months and I'm not coming back to Donetsk. Like, what's happening? Maybe it will take longer, my trip there. Because there was a referendum already, that was already occupied. But Mariupol was Ukrainian, and I saw that it was in Mariupol that they wanted to start the same that like it happens in Donetsk, started in Mariupol. And Mariupol is very close to Donetsk. So from the western part of Ukraine, from Lviv, I just decided to come to Mariupol to be closer to my hometown, and also to help local volunteers, local activists to resist. That's it.
So that means, when the pro-Russian separatists took power in Donetsk, this made you into an activist and made you into an artist. So it actually was a start of a new life for you.
Yeah.
And so in Mariupol, you started this new life. How has your work and the work of other artists and activists have been affected when the war started a year ago? I mean, you were there in Mariupol, and how did your life have been affected from that moment?
Like a year ago, we were planning another episode of art residencies, and on 24th, 2 artists had to come to Mariupol to start their work. And my first thought when I woke up and knew about the start of invasion, I was, okay, so what about the residency? Are we still making it, or maybe we postpone it, or what should we do with it? So I thought actually about culture, arts, and projects.
And then everything...
No, of course we couldn't do that. We canceled it.
So you actually had to leave eventually Mariupol because it became too dangerous for you. So you actually had to flee your home twice. First you had to leave Donetsk, then you had to flee from Mariupol.
And both times were not like my own decisions. It was decisions was made for me by...
They were forced on you. Mm-hmm. What has your life been since you've left Mariupol? I assume you're still in the Ukraine,
yep.
But how has your life been ever since?
From my experience, it's harder to lose your home the second time. The second time is harder because maybe you put more efforts, more soul in what you have, and then you lose it. And it wasn't only my home and another city that became my home, but also it was Platform 2, the space that I founded, and that really became a change-making platform in Mariupol, because Mariupol is still like a little bit conservative, because it's an industrial city, historically with a big industry, heavy industry, and it was a bit conservative. So all this modern arts was kind of provocative and progressive for the city by the time when we opened it.
So maybe we have to explain that when you came to Mariupol, you founded this art platform. Maybe you can explain what kind of space that was.
It was a space when we hosted events, not events, but artists, musicians, exhibitions, but not just arts for arts, but it was always arts about some acute social topics. It's about feminism, like gender violence, for example, or anything that is like very up to date. And also we were also like a space, like a safe space for teenagers from underprivileged groups, from vulnerable groups. Because we realized that these teenagers are actually invisible and underrepresented. So we managed to reach out to them, and our space became like a second home for them, because we organized workshops, we involved them in different cultural artistic practices, and gave them the opportunity to try themselves to be an artist or a musician or whatever, because otherwise those kids will have only one, future, like go to the plant and be a worker. That's it. So that's maybe the most important part of our space. I think the community of youth with whom, to whom, for whom we really made changes.
But now that Mariupol and most of its infrastructure has been destroyed in the war, the platform doesn't have a place to be anymore, at least physically.
Yeah.
So how do you continue, or do you continue your work with True, and what does it look like? So what's your life like now with this platform?
We do continue. We decided to not reopen, not find like another space to open or another town or whatever, because we really put so much in that space. So it's too early to think about it, So now we more not a space, but a collective, I would say. And we still work with those teenagers. We make online projects for their adaptation to the new realities, because many of them, they saw so much of atrocities and had to relocate. So this is a big stress. We make online projects. We make projects mostly online because even our team is distributed. We are not all in Kiev. Someone is in Riga, someone is in Berlin, actually, and the team is just distributed. So we learn to work in this format, and it's online format mostly.
So you want to continue this way also for the time being?
For now, yes, but then we all are waiting for the occupation of Mariupol,
What challenges are you facing as an artist and cultural activist working from a country that you have fled to? Because you said that there's people from True that are in Berlin or in Riga. How difficult is it to work there? I mean, if you left your country behind?
Well, everyone had to make a choice. Yes, it's a choice either to stay in Ukraine, it's a choice to leave while the war. Either choice is really hard, because staying is really putting yourself at risk every day, and undergoing some hardships like blackouts or missiles attack and all this. And on the other hand, if you choose to leave to Europe, to a more safe place, it doesn't mean that you are all, happy and that's it. No, it's even harder, because this phenomena, survival's guilt, this is something that is the biggest burden. And for example, our friends in Europe, our team in Europe, mostly in Europe, they are more worrying about us than us, because when they read the news that there is a missile attack on Kiev, now they are all in breakdown. They just imagine, all the worst. So we have to, to calm them down. It's even they are feeling it even more acute than we are. So
I think you very often have this topic in your Instagram posts and articles. You often talk about this difficulty of living with privileges, like, even after your escape, you said living, with you have running water, you have a car, simply surviving, that other Ukrainians have not, because they're still in Mariupol or in Luhansk or, in places where...
Even in Kherson, because Kherson is already deoccupied, but it's even more harder,
Yeah, so, and you just said also, this feeling of survivor's guilt. How do you manage to cope with this feeling? I mean, is art a way of dealing with it and helps dealing with this guilt? Or is it activism that maybe helps?
It could be art, it could be activism, but actually you really have to find your therapist, because every Ukrainian should find a good therapist, because now we will have PTSD. We don't have yet it, because we are inside of the trauma, because PTSD is post-traumatic syndrome. But we all have the adaptation disorder. We all have, different crises and different disorders. So we just have to admit that, we should have some systematic program, I guess, on the state level of overcoming this burden, including survivor's guilt, including all this new forms of, you never even thought that this kind of feelings or this kind of thoughts may occur to you. So we just have to admit that, we are living new life, totally new. Yeah, that's it.
You said earlier that you initially wanted the platform to be a safe space. You said for art and for activism and for the kids, to give them an opportunity or a different opportunity of life. Do you still feel that a culture can be this safe space for people in these times of war? and with these traumas that they're living collectively?
I do believe that arts can be a catalyst of healing and have a therapeutical, effect. Still do, because we had this project for youngsters, for teenagers, for relocated teenagers, online already last year, of involving them in some creative designing. They were so happy. They were so happy to channel whatever they feel into something, something visual. So at least judging by this experience, I can definitely say that it could be at least a channel, to process whatever you had.
And maybe for people who had to flee the country and are living abroad and who are, in Europe, that art and culture gives them also a platform to make Ukrainian voices heard, as you do when you are here in Berlin at the Berlinale, or you're in Documenta or wherever, like giving it, this voice.
Yes, amplifying our voices, exactly. And many Ukrainian artists who are now in Europe, they work a lot. They organize exhibitions, they organize different kind of cultural events. They go on talking about Ukraine through different mediums. They make beautiful arts, and even in Berlin, I know on at least 2 powerful Ukrainian art spaces that were just opened last year after, the invasion by relocated artists. And they keep working a lot to showcase Ukrainian culture and arts.
How do you believe that international and intercultural organizations and networks such as IFA could support the Ukrainian people, artists and civil society in a meaningful way in this time?
Well, again, giving us a stage, helping us to amplify our voices, actually giving us words in any way. This is a very good help because, well, of course I can talk with you about volunteer, about humanitarian aid. Of course, it all also matters. And we are really thankful to everyone who sent any kind of help, like from electric batteries to just warm clothes, to any kind of medical supplies to Ukraine. And even, cultural, artistic spaces, they donate something physical, not only cultural. That's very interesting phenomenon, that how arts has transformed to something very physical and material, which is really needed. That's how, for example, artistic musical collectives, they or festivals, they write that we accept donations for Ukraine because we want to gather some money for the evacuation bus. And they gather this money, they get this evacuation bus, and they send it to Ukraine, for example, So it's not only, it's when the place, the moment, when culture, arts, real help, something physical and, like emergency help, all came together.
So it's a mix. It's the platforms that are important that these institutions can give you and the organizations. It's the voice that is heard and helps to amplify, your cause. But it's also the very real necessary help that comes together.
Exactly. That's just how artists in Ukraine just came to serve in army. There were so many artists. There are so many artists of all kinds, like photographers, writers, authors, visual artists, DJs, musicians, who just went to defend our country. And it's, again, such a mixture of, when someone asks me, like, can art defend? I say, yeah, especially if it's an artist who defends my country at war. So it's, again, like very interesting times we are living. It's all the mixture of help, a mixture of different, of solidarity, which is like, even unexpected ways of solidarity.
Thank you so much, Ms. Berg, for your time and all this insight and for sharing your story with us. And I wish you all the best. Stay safe, please, and take care of yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, IFA, for this platform, because this is another platform of, to give voice to Ukrainians. Thank you for this. And thank you, Germany, for all kinds of help we do get from you. But it's not enough. Just remember, it's never enough.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Goodbye.
your time. Goodbye. That brings us to the end of this special episode on Ukraine. If you've enjoyed it, feel free to recommend the podcast to others. The next episode will be published next week. To make sure you don't miss this and all upcoming episodes, you can subscribe to the podcast. You can do that anywhere where you can find good podcasts, for example, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Deezer. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email us at podcast@ifa.de. For more information on our organization, IFA, Institut für Auslandsbeziehungen, visit ifa.de. With that, I say goodbye. My name is Amiral Al. Thank you for listening, and I hope you join us for the next episode.
Die Kulturmittler, der IFA-Podcast zu Außenkulturpolitik.